battle in D.C. over reining in the IRS versus giving it even more power. The White House threatening to veto a bill just passed in the House that would prevent the tax agency from asking groups specifically about their political, religious, or social beliefs. Instead, the administration actually wants to expand the IRS control over those kind of organizations. So should we rein in its power or give it more? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asser. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Elizabeth McDonald, Mike Ozanian, Rick Unger, John Tamney. Steve, do we really want to give the IRS even more power?
No, we should be giving it less. They're engaged in suppression. They're engaged in cover-up. They're engaged in trying to make sure groups don't go against the Democrats in 2014 and 2016. And brazenly, after being found out of doing suppression in 2012, they're now putting in formal regulations. But, David, 100,000 comments have come in against those regs, including a lot of liberal groups like the ACLU who realize Republicans can use this against them someday.
That's a great point, Rick. Even the ACLU is against them wanting to rein in freedom of speech by nonprofits.
Yeah, I don't think that's really what these regulations are about, though. Look, if you want to accomplish a 501c4 status, which means you don't have to disclose who your donors are, I don't think it's inappropriate that we should know if you're meeting the rules of a 501c4. Anybody is welcome to give money to a political group. Political groups are not being squelched in any way. The difference is, will the donors be disclosed? I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good idea.
Well, John, the point is they are trying to squelch the ability of 501c4s to make political comments. Before it was that can't be the majority of your mission. They want to rein that in much more tightly and give the IRS control over that, over free speech.
Yeah, I like the idea of reining in the IRS, but I almost think it misses the point. The IRS is corrupt because it administers a tax code that's been corrupted by Congress. If you buy a Prius, you're good. If you have kids, you're good. If you're a nonprofit, you're good. The problem is that the IRS is overseeing the tax code. If you want to fix this, you've got to scrap the tax code. There's no reason the IRS should know who's funding certain groups. There's no reason the IRS should know how much money I make on an annual basis. Fix the tax code, you fix the IRS. There's no other way to do it.
But, Rich, we have a simple choice here. We have the Democratic plan that would give the IRS more power to regulate speech of nonprofits, and then you have the GOP plan that would take some of that power away. Which do you prefer?
Well, you have to take it away. I mean, it's ironic that Rick cites these 501c4 rules, which allow you to spend up to 49% of your money that you raise on political activities and no limits on the time you spend on political activities. And now the IRS is negotiating with conservative groups to limit the money to 40% and to limit the time. So they're making up the rules on the fly. So they're, you can't cite, Rick, you can't cite the rules and then support the IRS flouting those rules.
You can if you understand what the purpose of a 501c4 was. We'll get to it.
Okay, EMAC, the fact is you've been looking at the IRS now for decades. I don't mean to age you because you're young and beautiful, but the fact is that there was a time when the IRS was used more consciously and more methodically as a political tool. I thought we got away with it. We got rid of that. Now they want to get back to it.
Yeah, I can't imagine why this White House would want to be equated or put itself anywhere near what the Nixon administration did, even what the Kennedy administration did. This is about silencing the opposition. This is putting a chill on free speech. And it's about nonpartisan activities, too, by nonprofits for voter education. Wow, if you force them to disclose donors, then make the president disclose all of his internet donors and all of his donors that he will not disclose who donate massive amounts to his campaign. The IRS is engaging and is being forced to engage in political favoritism. It is wrong, and it is fatally naive to think that we can sit here with an IRS as a tax collector being dragged into public policy and political fights. We've seen them put there before decades ago. It's happening again.
Mike Ozanian, what about Vox Populi? The folks out there, they don't want to give the IRS more power, do they?
Not at all. And, David, what's happening here is the Obama administration is using the IRS to data mine. They're going through all of these forms, and they're picking out specific things that are in common to conservative groups or opponents to the Obama administration, then trying to propose those as being the things that will not get tax-free status. That's exactly what they're doing. And the shame of all this is all this time is being wasted that could have been used to put forth pro-growth tax reform to get us out of this lousy recovery.
Not only time, but money as well. And Steve, to Mike's point, the fact is that a lot of what the IRS has been doing has been pointed out as illegal, even under current rules, by the Inspector General, although now they're attacking him.
That's right. And so brazen, David, as I say, when you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, and then you put it back in and say it's now lawful, it's amazing. Chicago should have invented this. What's corruption? We'll redefine it.
Rick, we were talking before about the Inspector General. He came out, of course, with a report saying that they were focusing almost exclusively on conservative Tea Party-like groups rather than some Democratic groups that were doing this politically. But now Democrats are attacking the Inspector General, saying that he published findings and conclusions that were improper, incomplete, that have called into question his independence, ethics, competence, and quality control. Are they trying to kill the messenger?
No, what they're doing is telling the truth. Look, what nobody wants to talk about is that IG acted wholly improperly. He had meetings with Darrell Issa where the Democrats should have been represented and they weren't. One more thing I got to throw into this conversation. Everybody is forgetting what 501c4s were created for. They were not intended to be political vehicles. They've been perverted and turned into political vehicles. Yes, they have.
No, they haven't.
That's why they're going to drop the number from 40%, 49% down to a lower number. You are free to have a political organization.
Hold on a second. John Tamny, here's what Democratic Chuck Schumer says about redoubling. He's trying to get the administration to redouble the efforts to crack down on Tea Party elites who, quote, gained extraordinary influence by being able to funnel millions of dollars into campaigns with ads that distort the truth and attack the government. That's what Rick just said. But whose definition of the truth? Do we want to have Chuck Schumer define what the truth? That's why we have a First Amendment, so that politicians can't define what the truth is. The general public does, based on various opinions.
And that's why the IG should follow the rules.
Go ahead, John.
Elizabeth hit it on the head talking about free speech. This is about free speech. The IRS blocked an anti-Obamacare ground game. That should horrify all of us, including Rick, in much the same way if the Republicans were trying to push something through and we muzzled Democratic groups, that should bother us.
But you know what? And let me tell you something. When how they're muzzling and what they're doing, we have congressmen threaten to use their anti-terrorism committees to hold hearings, to use their own committees, signing letters on their own letterhead, their committee letterhead, pressuring these so-called Tea Party elites. The Supreme Court has already said you do not have to disclose your donors if your group does not back an individual candidate. It's drawing the IRS into campaign finance regulation, which is not the appropriate place for the IRS to be.
And Steve, that's why we have an Inspector General. By the way, there was kind of a hit and run by Rick saying that Democrats weren't consulted at all in his. Well, I have in my hand a whole list. It's a redacted list of copies of exchanges between the IG and Democrats that goes from 2012 until 2013. So you cannot say that Democrats were not consulted.
That's
what their report says, and that's not true, Rick.
Yeah, except that's not what I said. I said that the IG had meetings with Darrell. Let me finish what I said. Had meetings with Darrell Issa, and the Democrats should have been represented in those meetings. They weren't.
Hold on a second, Steve. We have a big letter from the Democrats suggesting that there was no contact between Democrats and the IG. That certainly wasn't true with this exchange of emails. We see it was. So we have an IG. They are now attacking the messenger, who's the only independent observer of this process.
Yeah, when you attack anyone who gets in your way, you disparage everyone and make it sound like, oh, it's a debate out there and we're not doing anything wrong. And as for 501c4s, engaging in trying to educate people about what politicians are doing, and that's how you advance social causes. You can't pretend that politics doesn't have an impact on social issues.
All right. And again, you can't have some politician setting himself up as the final word on what the truth